Welcome to the Green Wisdom Health Podcast with Dr. Stephen and Janet Lewis, where you will learn about natural solutions to common ailments. And now, here are your hosts, Dr. Stephen and Janet Lewis.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of the Green Wisdom Health Show. I'm Janet Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Lewis.
And today we have invited a very special guest back again, whose name is Casey. He's one of our reps that sell us our high-quality products that we pass on to you. Very knowledgeable. He came to our last show. We had a really good response to that, so we thought we'd have him back today to discuss a different topic about stress.
He's highly intelligent and uncommonly good-looking, too, so, you got to listen to him.
Yeah, you can't see him, but he is good-looking. So, Casey, welcome.
Now I'm blushing. Appreciate it. No, thank you for having me back. And enjoyed our last conversation, and hopefully some folks can get something out of this one.
Yeah, I was talking, Dr. Lewis, y'all already know, is highly intelligent, and it's really hard to keep up with what he says. Casey comes here and brings a whole nother level of intelligence. I'm just like, hey, I'm the person that's listening basically here, so I'm going to try to moderate the whole thing and try to put it together when any of this goes over your head, which sometimes it will.
I'm going down rabbit holes. Thank you, Pete, from Concordia, Missouri. He told me not to talk about rabbit holes. It's like, well, I don't know how to do anything different. So y'all hang on, put on your seatbelts. We're going to throw this out here and see if you're intelligent enough to put it together.
I like that hang on, because this is called hanging on to anxiety and stress. And we all know y'all all are stressed. We've been stressed. We've been in the process of moving 2 homes in a year. And then with everything going on in the country, I think it's just been it's been a lot. And I was just speaking with Casey, and Stephen's been trying to help me through some of it because unlike, sometimes it's hard to really treat yourself, and then you see something and you're thinking, is that what that was? You have no idea what you even have going on, which is why we do our low-cost lab. But basically... See, I'm going down rabbit holes now. But for our 21st anniversary present, we bought a sleep number bed.
I told her I wanted a gun.
But he didn't get that because he don't need one right now.
Can't sleep on a gun.
You can't sleep on a gun, and he's got plenty. He probably could make a whole bed out of what he has. But other than that...
unless you're ATF listening, I don't have any.
We got this bed, and it's pretty cool because every morning it tells you on this app how you slept at night. And I kept being really, really disappointed because every morning I'd wake up and my heart rate was kind of high. The heart rate variability, which I don't really know what that is. I guess it's some kind of reaction to stress.
It's a measure of time in between heartbeats.
Oh, see there? See, Casey, I told you, smart, and good looking.
There's a window that you want to be in as it relates to your heart rate variability, and there's a lot of different ways that you can measure and kind of gauge where you're at. And it sounds like you have something that is built into your bed that's doing that. Yeah,
and it was depressing me because I wasn't winning. I'm kind of competitive, and it's like, Stephen's beating me at this, and I don't really understand how, and mine kept being low. And I told Stephen, I said, why is yours okay and mine's not? And, I'm considerably younger, so I figured that I would have a better heart rate variability. Right? No. I'm just messing with you. No, I'm not considerably, just some. But he kept passing, and I thought, what? How is that? Why? And Stephen goes, well, have you tried adding in melatonin? And I'm like, no. I said, I take a little bit. I said, I don't want any psychedelic dreams and stuff because it really kind of freaks me out. He goes, well, just try adding 1 in.
She missed the 70s.
I guess so. And so I did. And I noticed that on the app, I looked better. I had wild dreams the first night. And I told Stephen, I said, I had the wildest dreams. He goes, I know, isn't it great? And I thought, this is bizarre. But he said, just keep doing it. He said, it'll calm down. So I did it again last night, and then I added in a specialized probiotic, something we have here called Target GBX, and I guess Casey can explain some of that to you about how come some of it works out of the gut. But adding that in last night, and the melatonin, the extra melatonin, I feel better today than I have felt since last October, when all of this country stuff started flaring up and homes started selling. And I'm thinking, man, is that all that's all it took that really went out of my head? It was anxiety.
Well, anxiety comes from so many different areas, though. We've been literally in 3 homes within the last year, so we sold 2, and now we're in the 3rd one. But many people create their own anxiety by how they think, and that's why I always hit a little bit of the spiritual side. And Janet's a lot more OCD than me. She's younger and better looking, but she's way the heck overthinker. I just go to bed without a guilty conscience. But it's the gut-brain axis, and it's the adrenal glands, and Casey's going to get into a lot of this, and it's the food you eat. We're going to throw in a lot of things. And, I'm very, very anti-wheat. There's research that talks about wheat can cause schizophrenia through gut irritation. That's from Journal of Biological Psychiatry, Journal of Science. Wheat produces exorphins, which are similar to endorphins, which act as benzodiazepines or Valium-like drugs. That's from Journal of Orthomolecular Medicine. So wheat just in and of itself, and because of the glyphosate and the GMO and all that, it alters your gut microbiome. Now, Casey, take it.
And that's what I wanted Casey to explain, because we were talking prior to the show, and he said, what is wrong is people don't understand what anxiety and stress do to the body long term, and they don't associate some of the problems that they have later. But it was based on stress and anxiety not being remedied or knowing how to be remedied. So can you tell us what? But we have students raising hands. Dr. Lewis?
Yeah, before we let Casey get into that, I want to talk, and Casey will kind of verify this. People, you have to do it very consistently. It's not brushing your teeth once that gives you good, healthy mouth. And I had a sweet lady yesterday says, well, my husband quit doing it because it didn't work immediately. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm trying to be polite. I have trouble with that. I think, well, I know he works out because I see what y'all do on Facebook, and he still has a 50-pound gut. Why is he continually working out? He needs to continually take these supplements and then change his diet. Janet doesn't think I love her because I told her I loved her. It's a consistent speaking and doing. So consistency is what makes you win in life. And this is very, very true of the supplements and the probiotics. So talk a little bit about consistency and changing the way you think and finding peace. You can do that through supplementation, but you have to do it through how you think and how you choose. Choose means you have control, how you choose to deal with this stress.
I like that. That's a big part. So much of mental and emotional stress is perception. What a lot of people don't realize is that stress and stress-related disorders are accrued over a lifetime. So when these things are finally manifesting themselves in your 40s and your 50s and your 60s, to go think that you can have a profound impact over the course of a week or even a month or two is just setting expectations way too high for any type of, I don't care if it's a nutrient therapy, if it's a lifestyle therapy, or even a drug therapy. These types of, it takes time to undo a lifetime of stress, essentially. And that's what, kind of just going back to what stress and the stress response is, and the physiological response to stress in the bodies. There was a very specific, the role of the stress response is to help us to survive a short-term immediate stressor, right? So you go back thousands and thousands of years and you think of primitive man, they're sitting around a campfire and here comes a predator, right? Here comes a bear. We need that immediate mobilization of energy that allows us to survive that encounter. And then the stressor goes away and the stress response resolves. The problem with today's environment is there are so many new, novel stressors that we weren't necessarily designed to cope with, and they're barraging us day in and day out, every minute, every second, with our hyperconnectivity to our phones and to our email and financials and relationships and
so
work.
Bears are everywhere.
Bears are coming at us from every direction nonstop, and so we're constantly stuck in this stage of heightened stress. And then you couple in something I always talk about is moving beyond just this mental and emotional stress, which is when we have conversations about stress, that's the primary focal point. But what we have to understand is the physiological response to the foods that we eat, our sleep and inflammation.
Don't we eat foods trying to relieve the stress?
Eating is one of the most common ways that folks self-medicate with stress, because when you're in a stressful environment, your body craves quick energy in the form of carbohydrates or glucose.
Bluebell.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you're craving, and so we get stuck in this cyclical cycle where we're stressed because of life events. We're self-medicating with high glycemic foods that are also inflammatory, and they're causing blood sugar dysregulation. Blood sugar is one of the most, when you think about what stress actually is, it's the we talk about the HPA axis. It's the hypothalamus, it's the pituitary gland, and it's the adrenal glands. The hypothalamus in the brain kind of acts as this surveyor. It's constantly surveying both the environment externally and internally for threats. Low blood sugar, so when you think about you go eat that pint of Bluebell, it spikes your blood sugar, brain's happy, blood sugar crashes, low glucose is a direct threat to the brain. Then the hypothalamus detects that we need to internally increase glucose to the brain, so then we elicit the stress response. You compound that with, like I mentioned, just life's stresses, and then you compound that with the inflammatory nature of a lot of the foods that we're putting into our body and the things that we're doing to sabotage sleep. It's a recipe for disaster, and so many, I would say, maybe just in front of or just below pain, it's the most common complaint when people go see a doctor are stress-related disorders, and it impacts absolutely every single aspect of health.
Well, they don't sleep at night, which makes it really bad, right?
That is your body's, that's the time when your body needs to recover and regenerate, and if you're not doing that, it's very detrimental to health.
And then they turn into a bear because they're so agitated because they don't sleep.
It all comes down to your ability to respond or resilience, and that's what happens when you think about rubber band and this idea of physiological resilience, right? When we're young, stress comes at us. You pull that rubber band, so you're kind of stretching your physiological capacity. Initially, that rubber band's gonna snap back, but over time, you continue to pull on that rubber band. It's never going to come back to normal, and eventually, it is going to break. And that's what happens, and that's what's unfortunate is if you can get out ahead of this early, you can mitigate a lot of damage in the long term. But it's so often that folks don't seek medical attention until the rubber band is broken.
Well, the other part of that, a lot of people think that anxiety and stress is something that's in their head. It's not coming from anywhere else. And, what we try to educate, and I'm sure you do too, is that it actually starts in the gut. Isn't that correct? That it actually comes from the gut? There's neurotransmitters that go to the brain?
That's where a lot of the new research in this space is going. Yes, a large majority of your neurotransmitters, of your hormones, they're all produced and they're all metabolized in some capacity in the gut. And then going back to inflammation, a large amount of systemic inflammation is stemming from the gut and that gut immune interface. So if you have dysfunction at that level, in all likelihood, it's affecting your brain and your ability to cope with stressful events. Yeah,
and I think nowadays, it's like we're so on a path of, well, here's another bear, for a better word. Here's another bear, and we're like, so. I mean, we're also. It's almost like we're all just worn out from all the bears that have jumped out of the woods. We got nothing left.
Yeah.
And
well, and that's eventually what you find yourself in, is it's adaptation of the brain. It's a protective measure. The brain, when you have just persistent levels of elevated cortisol, which is the primary hormone that's secreted during a stress response, initially, it has a very, very, obviously a very important role, but it's also very catabolic in nature. It breaks tissues down. And so the body, this is what happens is you kind of move through the continuum of dysfunction. You have perpetually elevated levels of cortisol. So you're kind of stuck in this fight or flight state. They call this the alarm stage. This is where a lot of 30, 40, 50-year-old Americans, high-performing executives, etc., this is the state that they're in. And this is just normal life, right? You wake up, it's get the kids out of bed, it's get the kids fed, it's get to school, get yourself ready to work, go to work, come home from work, go to the gym, go pick up kids, take them to soccer practice, get dinner made.
I think he's speaking his life.
It does sound like a little bit like his own life.
It doesn't. It never ends, right? So you never get this opportunity to shut off. The brain wants to protect the body from the catabolic effects from cortisol. So it will begin to down-regulate cortisol production as a protective measure. And that's what happens is you kind of crash through. You get stuck in the stage 2 or the resistance stage, and then stage 3, which is kind of full-blown burnout, where your body no longer has the ability to mount an appropriate response.
Think low cortisol and adrenal fatigue. That's one of the factors. And, I know Casey's going to get into the microbiome. And for those of you that like to get real technical, there's a book called Microbiome Diet. There's The Second Brain by Gershorn. 10% human will scare the holy heck out of you, and make sure that you want to take good probiotics. I want to tell a quick story. I got a call yesterday, and she said, well, I got this probiotic because it was so well promoted and it had good reviews, and so she took this other probiotic, and she said it messed up my gut. She says, I'm cramping like crazy. I've never cramped like this, not even when I have my period, and da-da-da-da. I said, well, you're asking my advice. Why don't you just buy my stuff? I've already researched this. This is not your average supplement. When we get from Casey, I have to give an active license for me to buy this stuff. And Casey touched on this. You have to do it for a while. And there's this piece of a research study. It says Lactobacillus casei 3 times per day for 2 months. People experienced an improvement in anxiety when compared to those taking a placebo. But notice it said for 2 months, and it got better from there. You can't take it, once and done. It takes a long time to offset the physiological effects that have been going in the wrong direction for years.
And I think, y'all are talking about cortisol. A lot of you don't really know where your cortisol is. Doctors, I don't think that's something they generally run. Well, what y'all brought into us, they've not run it.
Well, the reference range covers a sick society, so I don't care if you're in reference range, you're not in optimal range, and that's what we look to achieve is optimal range. And I just talked to Matthew in Massachusetts, and he says, well, my mother and dad are about your age, because they had me as they were older, and I thought, well, I'm going to get insulted now, but he said, my mother is having the effects of living in corporate America. She's already had 3 joint replacements. She can't do any more because she keeps getting infected and reinfected, and so she's just trying to mitigate the pain. And that's what Casey was talking about. You get in corporate America and you get that fight or flight, that high cortisol release, and HPA axis is super, super important. Folks, we've got you covered.
Well, and I wanted
we may not promote it.
Yeah, talk a little bit about got you covered. In Casey touched on a little bit. You start off with high cortisol. And for those of you who don't know what your cortisol is, don't guess at which one you have. Right. Actually, do our lab work to figure out where it is, because you can take the wrong thing and feel worse. But basically, your cortisol will start off real high, like trying to get the bears. And then when they can't get the bears, then the cortisol says, I'm checking out now because I can't help you any longer. So then it drops really, really low. And then now we have got products based on where the cortisol levels are. Pretty excited about some of these. Some of them were new to us. Casey actually helped us formulate a name for one of these, and love the product for whenever you have had too many beers and your cortisol's too low.
It's a bigger kick in the pants than a double shot espresso, but it's not that nervous energy.
It's good stuff. It's called Adren-Up, and we do that because your cortisol needs to go up, so that's how you can remember. It's called Adren-Up. But could you tell us a little bit about what's in Adren-Up? And I think what makes it so wonderful is that there's actually the bovine.
Right. So there's the two products that we're talking about. There's a specificity to both, and it is important that you are taking this under the guise of a physician, because if you take the wrong product, it can make you feel worse. Mm-hmm. So for that patient, like I was talking about, they've had years and years and years of elevated cortisol levels. The body's kind of gone into that protective mode, and now it's fully down-regulated cortisol production. If you were to look at your diurnal rhythm or a single-point cortisol test, depending on how you're testing, you're either flatline throughout the day, and there's a very predictable, again, when you're looking at a diurnal rhythm, you start your morning with your highest levels of cortisol. It tapers out to the end of the day and really kind of drops off at night, allowing you to fall asleep. There are patients who they simply do not have the ability to any longer mount a stress response. Cortisol is flatline throughout the day. A product like Adren-Up is specific to that type of patient. It's working to not only help the patient adapt and improve overall perception of mental and emotional stress, which is obviously really important in these patient types, but specific things with the adrenal concentrate, which actually contains cortisol itself. And animal concentrates or glandular concentrates have been used for a long time, even in pharmaceutical therapies. Now we have like desiccated thyroid, which is used for natural thyroid hormone replacement therapy. For a long time, glandulars or adrenal concentrates were used specifically for patients with adrenal insufficiencies. They are still applicable in the supplemental industry, and so we have a concentrate in this formula that's actually providing cortisol in itself. But then there's specifics with the licorice root extract that are actually helping to extend the half-life of cortisol. And basically what that means is keep what active cortisol you have available, keep it active as long as we possibly can before the body works to metabolize it into inactive cortisone. A really new important update that we made to this formula recently was the inclusion of holy basil. And we kind of touched on those 4 key stressors earlier that all need to be addressed as part of this bigger protocol, right? So there's the mental and emotional component, there's sleep, there's inflammation, there's blood sugar regulation. Holy basil's kind of got a hodgepodge of research shown to positively affect all these different factors that are ultimately driving dysfunction in these patients. So it has an impact on helping people stabilize blood sugars. It's going to help you sleep. It's going to help reduce inflammation and boost immune function. So it's kind of touching on everything. So it really rounds out this formula nicely alongside of the adaptogens and the other components that are helping to help you overall mount a more appropriate stress response.
That is my favorite product for the mornings. That and coffee.
She says I get nicer when she takes it. So figure that one out.
You're talking about running cortisol at different times of the day. We always run ours. We have our patients run it in the morning, first thing in the morning, specifically for that reason, because if it's already really low in the morning, then it's a good chance it's going to stay low all day long and keep dropping.
And I think what Casey's talking about is really true, that there are tests where you can do cortisol tests throughout the day. And the reason I do not do that, even though I do think it's valid, is because every time we had a patient do that, the lab said the patient did it wrong. It's like, my patients aren't that stupid. And there's a problem in the lab. So you do have to be careful what lab you listen to. There's some out there that I think are, full of smoke and mirrors and baloney, but and I've done some of them on myself. Folks, we experiment just for your safety, and we'll get into the ones I think are good later at a later podcast.
And then Casey, I also wanted you to talk about the product. It has a dual name at this point. It's called Adren-Up Boost, and it will be changed over to Stress Adapt because people were getting confused with the name. So we want to make sure they know it's for stress, but it doesn't necessarily raise cortisol, correct? It just helps.
The opposite, actually.
Okay.
So more appropriately being called Stress Adapt, which again, this is, helping your body better adapt to stress, as the name implies. So this is more, think of that stage 1 alarm, stressed and wired patient type. Ideally, this is, you're catching this patient early before they kind of tumble down that continuum and need a product like Adren-Up. Stress Adapt is going to help to mitigate the long-term effect of chronic stress and physically lower cortisol levels in these patients, which is specifically what things like theanine are doing, increasing GABA production, increasing alpha brainwave activity, which is promoting a sense of relaxation. Phosphatidylserine, which is a phospholipid that's found in very high concentrations in the brain, but it also works in that HPA axis that we talked about, which is your stress responding equipment, essentially. It's shown to upstream kind of work to blunt the synthesizing and secretion of cortisol. So for that patient who has elevated cortisol levels, it's really going to help to bring those levels down and kind of calm that person down. Something that we recently did with this formula that I really liked, and this has personally become one of my favorite formulas, is the inclusion of Bacopa. Mm-hmm. And this is really following kind of the evolution of our understanding of the brain and how stress impacts cognitive function and how stress is contributing to neurodegeneration and cognitive decline and things like dementia and Alzheimer's.
And helps hormone balance. And when Casey said that, Janet got a really big smile on her face because it works so well. And I understand. I've been told I need to get less and less technical, but you need to understand that even my way of dealing with stress is being a smart aleck and bringing more laughter and joy in my life and others. But we have people like Casey that he's as close as an email or a phone call. Janet and I get the technical information from Casey and other people, as smart and good looking as he is. We have the stuff down. We have you covered. Be careful who you listen to out there, and always go with someone you can get in touch with.
Well, when you're talking about Bacopa, I especially like that because on lab, we actually use this product to help somebody that has a low T4 on their thyroid. It will actually help move it up. That's one way we know they need Bacopa, is if their T4 levels are too low.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a conversation for another day. But again, when you're stressed and you're stuck in just this perpetual state of the HPA axis just kind of lit up, your body's focusing on short-term survival. It's not concerned about tomorrow or the next day or the next month. It's not concerned about digestive function or immune function or hormone production. Its sole focus is to take all the available energy that you have at that immediate moment and help you to survive that encounter. The problem is, a lot of times that these responses that are being elicited nowadays, there's not that a need for immediate energy. Right, it's seeing a post on social media, it's checking an email. We don't need that energy source, but it's there, and it's impacting that response is impacting things like thyroid function And so it may indirectly help with some of these other issues. If we can calm down the HPA axis, it allows for energy allocation into other systems of the body. And the thyroid specifically, it shares two of the common components with the stress response, right? The hypothalamus and the pituitary gland is also involved in hypothalamus, pituitary, and thyroid axis. So if all of that energy is being geared towards the HPA axis, it leaves very little for the HPT axis to do what it needs to do.
So basically, just take this product and you'll be all good. That's what I heard.
It's potentially part of it. Absolutely.
Dr. Lewis, golly, this show's gone fast. Are y'all enjoying Casey being here? I know we are. We'd love to hear the feedback.
We had a lot of good feedback, and I really would like to hear some more. There was somebody the other day impressed because, oh my God, Trish, they talked about you. Well, Trish was kind enough to write us a really sweet email, and I told her yesterday, honey, you got my heart. I'll work my butt off for you. We work for compliments, and we work harder, and it's compliments like that keep me from just saying I'm retired, because I like to be needed. So, Trish, you kept me out of retirement for another while. And so thank you for letting us know that you like Casey. He kind of brings a little levity with a lot of information at the same time. He's fun to be around, and we'll always work hard to do our best for you.
Is there anything you'd like to follow up with stress and anxiety or not having it? Or
Yeah, do what Casey talked about. We'll help you with your microbiome and change the way you think and the way you feel. One of the best things you can do is go out and do something very, very kind for somebody and see if you can get by with it and do it anonymously. Always remember that nothing real can be threatened, nothing unreal exists, and therein lies the peace of God.
Oh, Casey, thank you for being a guest on our show again today. I hope you've learned something. You do not have to be stressed, and if you don't know where to start with our online health survey at greenwisdomhealth.com. Fill it out. It will recommend a lab panel. If you don't want the lab panel, that's fine too. Dr. Lewis will call. He can talk to you and help guide you to some supplements that may be key for you. If you don't know where your cortisol levels are and all that, we would suggest you go ahead and get the lab panel, because it will keep us from guessing. And we appreciate you just sharing this show with someone that may need it, and we appreciate you listening to us. So you guys have a blessed week. We'll be here next time on the Green Wisdom Health Show.
Once again, our show has come to an end, but your hope in your health is only beginning. If you or a loved one are in need of a different outcome and are waiting for a brighter future, take the first step and go to our website and fill out the health survey. Please don't keep us a secret. If you know someone that could benefit from this podcast, please share this show with your friends and family. You're only one step away from a life worth living.